What's up everyone, welcome to another episode. Today I want to talk to you about all the camera gear that I'm using to film myself and others while on the bike and for this channel. And to make things interesting, I'm actually going to be recording every segment with the camera that I'm going to be talking to you about. So there are going to be a couple of drones, so I'm going to be having a drone as my main camera, as well as some action cams, using the action cams as main camera, so that you get a little bit of an idea on what the quality differences are between all those cameras. And just to be clear, this is an absolutely non-sponsored video. No camera company is sponsoring this video. I bought all of this gear with my own hard-earned cash, so this, I would say, is gonna be as honest as it gets. So without further ado, I would say let's jump into the first camera. So let's start things off with this one. You see the image is already looking quite different, and it is an action camera, and particularly the DJI Action 2, which is one of the smallest action cameras that I know. I love this form factor of this like little square. I also have this little display add-on attachment that you can connect to it, so that right now, for example, when I'm recording, I actually can see myself and I can see the frame. It also records in 24 frames per second in 4K. It also supports a bunch of other frame rates, which are not really that interesting to me, because everything that I record on pretty much all of those cameras, I always try to log everything in at 24 frames per second, because I just love that little bit of extra motion blur when things are moving fast. And sometimes on the bike, at least the people that I'm recording are moving fast, so it's nice to have a little bit of that motion blur going there. So as I said, I mainly use this one because of its form factor. It's really nice because I can easily clip it in magnetically underneath my handlebar and basically have that perspective. It also has this nice pendant, which you can basically hide underneath your shirt or your jersey and connect the camera magnetically down here and have a nice first person perspective as well. So this is a very nice upside, and also one of the main reasons why I picked this camera, because I think it is nice to record those kind of first person perspective while out on the bike. It is also a very sturdy camera, I have to say, almost non-destructible. I had it stupidly mounted in a camera cage mounted underneath my handlebar recently, and during a late evening ride it actually fell out of that cage, and behind me there was a taxi driving, which of course just ran over it. And to my surprise, actually nothing happened to the camera. It only had a little scuff mark on the outer housing, and the display and the lens protector have been broken, which is something that I applied pretty much firsthand after I purchased this camera. So I just swapped out those lens and display protectors, and it is like brand new again. So I really have to say it is a tough cookie. The only downside is that it is sometimes a little bit unpredictable. I'm getting this error message that the camera is not up to temperature, even though I'm using it while in Mallorca or just during sunny days here in Berlin. So there's definitely not a temperature issue. The DJI forum is also packed with these kind of people reporting this error, and unfortunately I at least didn't see any statement from DJI on how to fix it. So it still sometimes happens to me. I already swapped this camera out once, but still even on the replacement unit, I still sometimes get this warning, and then it seems like the camera is locked up at least for like half an hour or an hour. So it can be a little bit of a downside if you're planning a big shoot and you really rely on the camera and then it's giving up on you. It can be a little bit frustrating, and this is basically also the main reason why currently I'm playing with the idea of swapping out this camera with the Insta360 Go 3S, which is even a tiny bit smaller than the Action 2. It looks like a little pill. It also records in 4K, but I think it is $400, so I'm a little bit hesitant on purchasing that one. But as I have this Mallorca trip coming up soon, I definitely want a reliable first-person perspective camera, so I might pull the trigger on that. If you're using the Go 3 or Go 3S, let me know down in the comments what your experience is with this. And with that, I would say let's move on to the next camera. So this is now the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. Yeah, also quite a portable camera that has a 1-inch sensor and a really nice tiltable 2-inch display. So it's very nice that, for example, right now I clearly see the picture that I'm recording for you. It also comes with this built-in gimbal, so it gives you additional stabilization. So while action cams mostly use electronic stabilization or software stabilization, this camera actually uses a gimbal to actually compensate with the lens or the camera module for any movement. And that also comes with the upside of some gadget features, I would say, like face tracking. Like, for example, right now you see that I can move around and the camera is actually following me. Not that I've ever used that feature so far, at least I don't think so, but it is something that in marketing videos always is being brought up as a big upside of those kind of cameras. So it is a nice gimmick, but I'm actually not using it that much for this. The big benefit that I see with this camera is image quality. It has this 1-inch sensor. Of course, it is not a full frame camera sensor, but you get a little bit of this background blur. I'm gonna add a little bit of footage that I recorded with this camera so you can see what I mean. And this, of course, will then look better than any footage from any action camera, at least from any action camera that I'm aware of. Even though it has this gimbal, the camera seems to be able to take quite a beating, because I'm very frequently taking this camera out and just putting it up in my back pocket and pulling it out quite often and then having to push it back in. And of course, sometimes the jersey gets stuck to the gimbal and moves the camera out of place and so on and so forth. But I actually never, knock on wood, had any issues with the camera actually failing on me. And also in comparison to the previous camera, to the Action 2, this one, the Pocket 3, because it is a little bit bigger and it has this handle, it is a little bit more user-friendly when it comes to ergonomics when you're out on the bike. So also because you have the screen, you have the little joystick that helps you to position the camera, it feels a little bit more secure in your hand because there is just more surface to grip on. While this tiny Action 2 is kind of nice, but if you use it without the camera module, you very easily, when you grab it, sometimes I notice that I have my fingers in the image that I'm recording, and this is something that actually never really happens with this kind of camera. So overall, I think out of all my cameras that I use for this channel, if I would have to only limit myself to one camera, it might actually be this one, because it kind of seems to cover a lot of use cases. I think in theory I could even use this as a studio camera, because I think with a little bit of touch up, that image actually also looks quite nice for these kind of talking head shots. But anyways, now I would say let's move on to the next camera, which is gonna be it's gonna show you quite an interesting image. So this is now the Insta360 X3. As the name already says, it is a 360-degree camera, which means basically that it records everything around itself. It records in 5.7K, which seems quite nice or quite big and high resolution at first, but 5.7K actually means that it's covering the whole image. So basically everything that it sees around itself in 360 degrees. And the upside actually in general of this camera is that you do the framing afterwards in post-production. So right now I'm just having the camera sitting in front of me. I kind of see it on the screen looking at me, but in post-production I can actually just pan over to my bikes over there and show you my bikes, and then pan back without having to think about moving the camera already right now. But when you do this kind of panning, of course this is cropping into this 5.7K image, resulting in something that in the end is quite a bit lower than a 4K image. So you still, I would have to say, see a difference whenever I'm cutting in this camera, but it has one major advantage, because it allows you to use it on the invisible selfie stick. So as I think the technology behind this is that you have these two lenses that are covering a little bit more than 180 degrees of recording field, and you have the stick underneath. Those images kind of overlap and allow the software to kind of cancel out the stick, giving you almost the possibility to do drone-like shots. So it is nice when you're just walking around in the park or wherever, making a little bit of a fool of yourself, talking to yourself or to a stick, or if you mount it behind yourself on your bike or on the side, it allows for actually some crazy angles that I would say I at least wasn't able to get with any other camera, except potentially, I mean, if you have a skilled drone pilot, you can of course always have a drone pilot flying next to you and recording footage. But if you're recording mainly footage all by yourself like I do, this is actually quite a nice tool. And I'm aware that there is a new version of this, the X4, which I think records in 8K if I'm not mistaken, which also sounds like a lot at first, but I've seen a bunch of side-by-side reviews and the difference in image quality doesn't seem to be that massive after all. So I'm kind of waiting for the X5 to drop to, once I crop the image in, to get a resulting image that's closer to a 4K image. But as you see in the examples that I'm showing you, I think it is actually quite an interesting camera, allowing for very interesting shots, especially when you're by yourself, to get these kind of drone-like or third-person shots. So this is it about the X3. By the way, if you're using the X4 and you made a comparison and have a strong opinion on that it is significantly better or actually not to the X3, let me know down in the comments, because I'm always on the fence on potentially hitting the trigger on purchasing the X4 as well, just to get that little bit more image quality. So that was it with these cameras so far. And before we move to the drones, let me just ask you to maybe consider subscribing this channel, because I see that the majority of people that are watching my videos are actually non-subscribers. So just consider it. If not, of course, also fine. Now let's move forward to the drones. So the next camera is actually mounted on the DJI Mini 4 Pro drone. So while I'm a big fan of DJI drones, I already owned the Spark and I think the Mini 2, and I love the image quality that was coming out of them. But those drones have been a little bit useless for me, at least on the bike, because they didn't have any of the intelligent flight modes that have been, at least at that time, kind of limited to their more bigger and more professional drones. And what I mean with smart flight modes is that most of the bigger drones back then had a function where on the remote controller, like on this one, you've been able to highlight the object that you're recording and select it, and it would be able to track that object. So for example, while you're on the bike, you could select yourself and the drone would fly behind you, on the side of you, or in front of you. But still, with those smaller drones that are underneath 249 grams, which is something that was actually the only option for me, because this is the weight limit of where you kind of need to register a drone versus you can basically just fly it almost everywhere without having to register it. That was a little bit of a KO criterion for me. So once the DJI Mini 4 Pro came out, I immediately purchased it because it actually came with those smart or intelligent flight modes, whatever you want to call it. And it is a nice pocketable drone that you can nicely fold up and put into your back pocket. And it has those smart flight modes that it can follow yourself without any interaction on the remote. So now whenever I'm on the bike, I'm actually using this little Garmin adapter from a company called Moose. It's actually, I think, an adapter that you would normally use to mount your phone to your upfront mount. But I mounted the counterpiece on the remote controller of the drone. So basically this just clips in, and then I'm having this sitting in front on my upfront mount, and I can very easily monitor the image of the drone, and then also very easily just with one finger change the position of the drone of how I want it to follow me. And as you might see, and I hope you would agree, the image quality is actually very impressive out of such a small drone. Also the tracking works really well. Also obstacle avoidance works very well. I think that this is one of the very few drones that I never crashed because it has those sensors around it that it detects if there is a tree coming or another person, that it basically just avoids that person or that tree and flies around it without crashing. So yeah, it's one of my favorite toys and gadgets, I gotta say, out on the bike, because the footage, anything that's coming from up there, yeah, it just always looks a little bit more impressive. So I'm looking forward to take this one out to Mallorca as well. And yeah, but there's one more drone which recently came into my selection, which I want to talk about next. So let's go. So next up is going to be this Hover X1 Pro drone. And you might already be wondering, why am I not recording on this drone and back on my regular main camera, which by the way is a ZV E10. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So I just wanted to connect the drone with my phone, because normally you have a nice preview of the image from the drone, and I thought that that will be the only option for me to record footage from here without taking off. But it turns out that I think the Hover company released an update a couple days ago. At least I see that the app has been updated a couple days ago on my phone, and I'm not able to connect to it anymore. There seems to be a firmware update which seems to come with some exciting updates, because it says something like cycling mode. But even there, I'm also not able to update the unit with this. I'm not able to switch into preview mode, even though the battery is fully loaded up. I already rebooted the unit a couple of times, battery in and out, and it didn't work. But I hope that this is still something that's going to be fixed within the next couple of days. But unfortunately for this video, I cannot show it to you. I can only show you a little bit of footage that I recently recorded with this drone. And yeah, it actually looks quite nicely. I gotta say, I don't know if it is on par with the DJI drone, because I still need to do a little bit of a side-by-side comparison. But you might ask, why did I buy another drone when I already have the DJI one? And even though the DJI setup is pretty convenient already, I gotta say, but you still have to carry around this rather chunky remote control. And the Hover drone, actually, first of all, it folds down into this tiny form factor, and then you basically open it up like this, and it doesn't require a remote. It fully starts out of your palm, and it also lands back in your palm, and via a tiny display that's up here, you select which kind of mode you want, like if you wanted to follow you from the back or from the side or from the front, or to do circles around you and all that kind of stuff. It is actually quite smart, and I already had the previous version of this one, which was just called X1 without the Pro, but it only had 2.7K resolution, and the quality of the image in general wasn't that great. But back then I was already able to yeah, to figure out that this kind of tracking and taking off without a remote and landing especially works quite well. So which is why I purchased this drone quite early, and so far, while the image quality seems fine, I got a little bit of mixed feelings about it. First of all, because unfortunately this just happened, like basically while I'm recording this video, that I'm having a technical issue which would have been a bigger issue when I would be out on the bike, and I would want to now use this drone to follow me on some epic ride, and I wouldn't be able to connect it to my phone, because of course I would like to have a preview and still monitor whatever the drone is seeing while I'm riding. And the other thing is, which is also pretty much the same issue that most Chinese companies in general have that are direct to customer, which I'm very aware of, being a cycling channel here and featuring a bunch of frames and wheels and components that are coming directly from China, and which most of the time is also the major critique point in the comments, and it is what happens when something doesn't work and you do need support. And I actually had this with this drone. Like when the drone shipped to me, it was actually having an issue with the gimbal, so it wasn't properly flying and it couldn't properly track, and it took I think 3.5 weeks from me sending this drone out back to them to receiving a replacement. And this is no cheap drone, so that was a little bit of a frustrating experience, and it is a little bit of a downside, I guess, when you buy directly from China. I mean, it's not a showstopper, it's just something that you want to keep in mind. And I mean, I still have the drone. In theory it works. I mean, it worked I think 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when I used it last, but still something to be aware of. I mean, with the DJI stuff, nobody's perfect. I also had some things break on the DJI products, and for example with this tiny Action 2 from DJI, I already had to send that one in and get it replaced, but there the whole process I think took 3 or 4 days because they have their warehouses in Europe as well, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that is something to keep in mind. I mean, I hope to get this one fixed. I'm just gonna write their support and hope that somebody's gonna get back to me, but I already googled and checked Reddit, and it seems like that I'm not the only person who's having that kind of issue, so I hope that they are on this. And yeah, I mean, that was it with the kind of gadget side of things. Maybe the last camera to mention is this camera that I'm recording actually for the majority of my talking headshots, which is the Sony ZV E10, which is, I think, actually the camera that I have from the very beginning. It is a tiny APS-C sensor sized camera. It is quite affordable, I gotta say, within the 4K Sony camera market. I'm only using the stock lens that it came with, and I'm very, very happy with the image quality that it provides. There's nothing that's actually pushing me to go to anything more expensive or bigger. And yeah, it just proves that yeah, you don't need like the latest, greatest, biggest, most expensive camera to start your YouTube journey. So if this is maybe what's holding you back to yeah, starting on your own path, then yeah, give it a try, even without waiting to purchase like this big 5,000 euro camera that you might have in mind, that you might think you really need, but you actually don't. So anyways, I would say that this is going to be it for this rather technical episode. I hope that you enjoyed it, to see a little bit of a different perspective on this channel. And as always, I would say thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.